hello, for example, we now get a pretty cow saying hello, and we can use things like a -D to kill our cow and make it a dead cow. Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Ash. I'm a cybersecurity enthusiast, and on this channel we go over everything capture the flag, cybersecurity, hacking, and we share the journey together. In this video, we are going over Roppers Academy's Computing Fundamentals course. If you want to catch one of the later episodes, a full playlist is available for you. All timestamps and links will be in the description below. Alright, let's get into the video. So I'm on roppers.org and we've got Build a Linux Lab. So we've got 9 sections to go over. The first section is virtualization. So our intro says building your own home lab is important for a lot of reasons. So our home lab is a term that's used for your at-home systems that you set up. So whether it's virtual systems, so like software, or you like hardware and you buy computers and put together your own network with routers and firewalls physically. So whether it's simple or it's more complex, it's all a home lab. And this sort of introduces us to this virtualization topic. So if we look at the graph here, we've got our computer system, we've got the hardware on that computer, and then we're running this software called a hypervisor or virtualization software. So there's a few major ones out there. And what this does, it sort of packages together using virtual hardware, and we install a guest operating system on top of that virtual hardware, and then we run our applications and everything like normal. So it's just like running miniature computers with inside your computer, but you don't have to just stick with like Windows or Mac. Like you can install lots of different things. So naturally that leads us to the benefits where you can have one system, one computer, and you can run multiple virtual machines. It also allows us to easily transport those virtual machines from system to system, and because that hardware is abstracted away, then there's less compatibility issues. So we could set up a VM on a Windows system and then export it and go put it on a Mac or a Linux. And then it's also a protection. So in case we install a virus or we configure something wrong and we just totally ruin a virtual machine, it doesn't matter, it's just software, so we can just delete it and create a new VM. That comes to the end of our virtualization topic. So there are a couple of questions for you to go through. So we have gone over a couple of them already. So our next section is virtualization software. So the goal of running a hypervisor on our system is that we can start using Linux more and more. So now it's really up to what virtualization software that you want to use. So sort of the main three are Hyper-V, which is like built into Windows 10 Enterprise Pro or Education. You've got VMware Player, which is also free, closed source, which you can use on Windows 10, or the open source alternative called VirtualBox. Now, if you are running an M1 Mac or an ARM processor, there is VMware Fusion that will work. It's really up to your system and maybe do a little research into what you might prefer. But I think as a baseline, you're going to be pretty safe with starting off with a VirtualBox and then go from there. Personally, I have VirtualBox and VMware Pro, and I sort of switch between them. I can't really say that one's better than the other. It's just sort of what I feel like using on the day. So there's a note about using Chromebooks, which is sort of a lockdown operating system, which doesn't give you as many choices. It's generally not a great system to stay on. So there's another section for us to go over. I'll be using VirtualBox and I'll be installing Ubuntu, and I'll just be following along with their website. Okay, so that brings us to our next section, install Ubuntu. And we've got our handy link where we can go and download the desktop version. So we can go over there, we can click download. So just bear in mind that it can be around 3 to 4 gigabytes worth of data. So depending on your internet speed, it might take a while. It's the whole operating system all condensed or compressed into one file, an ISO or an ISO, which is just essentially like having a disk and you're installing off that. So while that is downloading, you also need to go grab a copy of your hypervisor. So in this case, I'm going to use VirtualBox. So you've got Windows host, Mac host, Linux distros, whatever your host operating system is, pick the download and install that suits. And they do have a developer preview for the M1 and M2, which is a good thing. So once VirtualBox is downloaded, just install like you would any other program. Select next, next, you want to install everything by default, so you can just install and let it do its thing. Cool, so it's pretty easy to set up a VM. Once you open up your hypervisor, click on new, give it a name like Ubuntu. It's going to do its best job to detect the type and version. 64-bit, Linux is all right, but you can see that if it was wrong or you're going to install something else, there's a lot of options there. Next, how much memory you want to give it and processor. So each operating system has got like a minimum amount of resources you can give it. So obviously don't give it all of your resources, don't give no resources. For me, I'm just going to give it 8 gig, but anywhere between like 4 and 8 would be fine. I'm just going to give it 4 processors, but you don't have to do this exactly. It depends on how many resources you've got on your system. Hit next. I'm just going to leave the default 25 gigabytes of storage. So that'll create the VM on the side here. You can see my other VMs that I've got in folders. So if I just hit start, that's just going to go to a blank screen. So if we click on the optical drive, because remember the ISO is like a disk, so we can select optical drive, choose a disk file, and we can select that ISO that we downloaded earlier. Now select start, that's going to open up the new window and we can just go ahead and follow those prompts. So once that's booted up, you can use your arrow keys to select try or install Ubuntu. If you can't get your mouse out of the VM, select Control and Alt on your keyboard and that'll get you your mouse back, but it also might just be able to go in and out. Okay, so we can now use our mouse, so we can go install Ubuntu. Make sure you've got the correct language, so you can select normal or minimal. I'm just going to leave normal. I'm not going to worry about updates. It is a good idea that you do. I'm just not going to do it for the sake of time. Erase disk and install Ubuntu. It's going to confirm, just hit continue. So feel free to put your actual location in there. Now, because this is just a VM, I'm not going to use like a good password that's secure and stuff. I'm just going to use like a default one. Great. So after you fill those details in, it's just going to take a couple of minutes to copy all the files over from that ISO and install in that portion of your hard drive that we've set up for our virtual machine. All right, so once it's finished installing the packages and copying over the files, select restart now, and you might see this please remove the installation medium, then press enter. So if you click back into VirtualBox and go on your Ubuntu system that we created, make sure that optical drive is empty. It looks like it's already done that for us. Otherwise, you can click that and go remove disk from virtual drive. Come back here, click in and hit enter, and it will start booting up like normal. So once your Ubuntu virtual machine is booted, the first thing you might notice is the resolution doesn't scale very well. So there's something called guest editions, and this is pretty common for all of your hypervisors, not just VirtualBox. But in order to have your guest operating system, Ubuntu in this case, work a little bit nicer and have things like scalable resolution in that, we just need to install guest editions. So within your virtual machine, we can go up to devices and there's insert guest editions CD image. That'll put this virtual disk into the system and we can see VBox GAs or guest editions is there. Once we click on that, we can actually select run software. In the case that running software doesn't work like it has for me, we can select on all apps, open up our terminal. So once in your terminal, we can just CD over to the media directory and it should be your username. And we can see in there that we have our VBox guest editions. So again, if we change directories into that VBox and we list out everything in there, now we can manually run. And we want to run this VBox Linux editions.run. So we can use the shell and we can execute that with our period / VBox Linux editions.run. So we had an error there. This program must be run as admin. So we just want to hit our up arrow, do that again and use sudo this time at the beginning. Type in our password we set earlier and hit enter and run that again. So the system needs a restart. So we can just type in reboot now again with admin privileges. That will reboot our virtual machine. And now you'll notice when you start resizing the windows that you get the scaling like we sort of expect. There's also some helpful information about in case that your VM is a bit sluggish or it's a bit slow, you'll need to power down your system. So you can just close that and hit power down. So that's just like hitting the power off button on your machine. If you save state, it's still technically, it's like running your computer in sleep. So you can't make some system changes if you have that saved machine state. But if you do power down, you can come into the settings of your machine and you can go ahead and adjust your motherboard or your base memory rather, processor, all that sort of stuff. You can adjust once it's powered down. So the next section is Virtualisation Tools, and we've just gone over how to install that and get that up and running. So if you're unsure of anything, that you can follow those links there. If you're using VMware, the process is pretty similar, but yeah, use the links, or you can go to the official documentation for either application. So we're up to the section, make it your own. We've got the terminal open here and we're using wget. So we can have a look at the man page, which is our manual. So the wget is the non-interactive network downloader. So we can give that a scroll and we can see wget options and then our URL. So if you scroll down a bit, we can see our capital O dash capital O is file or for output document equals file. So this is where and what we're going to output our file to. So this is saying, hey, can we go out here and grab this .jpeg, and can we then install it as wallpaper.jpg? And remember from earlier, this is our home directory. So it's going to save in our home directory in a downloads directory inside that as the JPEG. So we can copy and paste the whole commands. Just make sure we set our shared clipboard to bidirectional. Then we can paste that in, we can hit enter. We had an output from our standard error, no such file or directory. So what we're just going to do instead is we're just going to run wget against that remote JPEG that's hosted on GitHub. And we've just got that in our home directory. So how about we move that over into our downloads, and we can also rename it while we're moving it. So move that file into our downloads directory, and I'm going to call it wallpaper.jpg. Now, if we cd over into our downloads folder, we have a look in there, we've seen it's moved plus it's renamed. So the next instructions is this G settings. So if we look up the man page for G settings, it's G settings configuration tool. So we can use this tool to set a lot of the configurations for our guest operating system Ubuntu. So we can see here by running G settings, we're using the set subcommand org gnome.desktop.background, and we're setting the picture URI, and we're setting it to this file. So once we type that out, we just need to set the path to our wallpaper. So in my case, it's home. Once we pass that through, and you'll just need the full path, including your username and home directory. Once that's been put in correctly, we can go back to our wallpaper and we'll see that it has changed. Great, so there is an assignment there. So we've got some more using the man commands, and we've actually already done a little bit of this together. So it gives you a little bit of a head start, which brings us to our next section, which is updating the Linux packages. So we read one of the first things that we should do, we should update the software. We'll be looking at that in just a sec. But before we do, we're going over sudo or sudo and privilege. So already there were a couple of things that I couldn't do that I needed to run this sudo. Sudo runs a command as another user, but by default, it runs another command as the most admin highest privilege user, which is root. This is actually a standard practice for modern operating systems. It's like if you install Windows, you aren't by default the administrator of that machine. You're not the administrator account. You've got your own user, and you'll need to select run as admin to do something with admin privileges. So it's sort of like that here in Linux. So let's see how to use sudo with the next section, packages. Packages are the dependencies, the other software that we need to run our operating system and other programs on our operating system. So if we scroll down to the update packages, we can now use sudo and we can update our packages. So let's follow sudo apt-get update. Now I will just say apt works fine. What I like to do is chain this command together so we can use ampersands to say, hey, run this command. Once that's finished, run the next command. So I'm going to run two commands all in one line, sudo apt update. So that's going to grab everything, and then sudo apt upgrade. Hit enter. That's going to prompt you for your password. Type that in and let it run. If you selected install updates when you first set up the operating system, then this may take no time at all because it has got a lot of those updates. However, I didn't, so I can see that it's prompting me, do you want to continue? Capital Y for yes. Yes. So it's going to give us an estimated time. Right now, mine's going to take quite a long time to grab everything. So just be patient with yours. Great, so once that's done, if there's anything left over, we can go ahead and run sudo apt auto remove, Y, enter, and that'll just get rid of anything that's left over that we don't need on the system. Great, so installing programs, there's a few ways to do it. Using our terminal, we can just go sudo apt install, and we'll go and get a program called cowsay. So there are some directories like this one, http us.archive.ubuntu.com, where these packages are stored, where these programs are installed. So when we type this program, it goes and looks in all the places that are already in the system. It's like, hey, go look out on this server, and it will go find. If something matches that program that we're trying to install, it goes, hey, great, I found it. It goes and gets it for us, installs it, and now we have it on our system. So if we run cowsay hello, for example, we now get a pretty cow saying hello. We can also look at the man page for cow save, or we can look at the help page just like any other program, and we can use things like a -D to kill our cow and make it a dead cow. All right, so further on with our next section, installing programs, we have our personalized section. So this is how we can do some more. So installing some applications, so we actually already looked at doing that once, but we can go ahead and do it again with this GNOME tweaks. Sudo apt install, and I'll just paste that in there. Takes a couple seconds, goes out and grabs everything we need. And if you go ahead and run GNOME tweaks, that'll bring up this tweaks options where we can further go and change our interface text and all sorts of things. Second is another way that we can install programs through a .deb file, which is sort of like an exe on Windows. So by default, Firefox comes with our Ubuntu install. So to get a .deb file, I've gone to Chrome. We'll click download, accept and install. Once we've got our DEB file, we can just make sure that it's there. Then back in our terminal, we can cd into that downloads folder, and we can just run sudo dpkg-i for install and the package name. So just you can hit GO in this tab, but that'll unpack install. Again, takes a couple of seconds. So now if you go to show all applications and you go to the end, you'll see Chrome. Great, a couple of programs, and you can go ahead and do that again for GIMP, and you can follow the instructions about making a dope ass meme. Second last section is your chapter survey. And then the very last section is a support roppers part 2. So if you're feeling generous, if you're feeling kind, if you can go ahead and follow those links to donate or give to the generous cause of the Roppers Academy. So that brings us to the end of Build a Linux Lab for this Computing Fundamentals video. Thank you so much for making it all the way through. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and consider subscribing if you're interested. Up on the screen there will be a link to a Try Hack Me walkthrough video that I think you'll like. I'd really like to get your feedback on it, so if you can, that'd be great. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. All right, see you later.